Hi, everyone. Welcome. We'll get started in just a little bit. Hello, everyone. We will get started in a little bit.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, everyone. Um, I was going to actually give us a couple more minutes and wait before we began, just to get give folks more time to join. But I think we actually have everyone who registered, or if not everyone, very close to everyone. So we will go ahead and actually get started basically on time. So thank you all for coming. My name is Nick Harper. I am the Civic Engagement Director for the League of Women Voters of Minnesota. And this is kind of the kickoff to the 2021 League of Women Voters Minnesota State Convention. So thank you for participating. This is the optional workshop portion of convention. So it's not required. We're glad folks showed up. Thanks for coming. There won't be any official business at this meeting. But we'll talk about the advocacy work of the League and how it works, a reminder of the resources available, We will talk about our current ongoing major advocacy project, which is People Powered Fair Maps. And then there will be lots of time for a discussion and Q&A if people have questions about how things work, or in general, just have questions, advocacy questions for me or Paul. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A and discussion. So let me go to my next slide here. So just to give, like I mentioned, we're going to cover multiple pieces. There is going to be about 20 to 25 minutes of me going through our current program and resources available, just as a reminder for some folks. About a 10 to 15-minute presentation from Paul on People Powered Fair Maps, and then lots of times for Q&A and discussion to hear from folks as we go through all of this. I do want to be clear, at least for my portion, Paul may feel differently and he'll let folks know when he speaks. But during my portion of the presentation, if you have questions, you're more than welcome to ask those questions. You don't have to wait until the Q&A at the end. So use either the, I think there is a raise hand function. If there's not, you can just unmute yourself and interrupt, or put something in the chat. I'm going to try and watch all that. So hopefully that'll all work. So before we begin, I wrote to remind us where it all came from and how we kind of started all this. And this is a quote from the March 19th, 19 St. Louis Jubilee Convention of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. There could be no go-it-alone campaigns, but that provincial shackles must be dropped, nationwide plans adopted, and constructive cooperation from all branches assured. And it's that kind of coordination and, cooperative and joint work that we really want to engage in. And so that's kind of the goal here, is to kind of remind everyone what resources are available, what our current big project is, and how folks can get involved in that, and then also open it up for discussion and Q&A, because we're always looking to improve and expand, and so this is definitely an opportunity to have those conversations. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this screen, and I'm going to go ahead and get started and move over to the website where I'll be showing folks where resources are. Before I actually get started, does anyone have questions or have a burning question that they know they want answered, so that I make sure to get to that question? If not, we can go ahead and jump in. And but I do want to make sure I give folks time to mention if they do have any burning questions that they want to talk about. Okay, I don't see any, so I will go ahead and jump in and start sharing my screen again. So all of you are league members. You know that in general, our mission is empowering voters and defending democracy, but that's not all we do. We do work on other issues and engage in lots of ways. And so I wanted to go through what resources are available for people, and what the, where folks can find things, because I think, especially for newer members, not everyone realizes the breadth and scope of the work that we have going on with the league. And for even long-term members, they might not know some of the changes that we've made and how we do our work. So it's always great to give folks a refresher on what we're doing and the resources that are available. So if folks are not super familiar with our program for action, so maybe you join the league because you're really interested in voter registration and candidate forums, and you don't know that much about the program work or the advocacy work that we do. I would say our public-facing pages are great places to start, and that's on where we stand. So under this, on this menu, we have kind of our key, some of our key issues that we're working on, or that we always work on. Voting and elections, people powered for maps, money in politics, restoration of voting rights. You can definitely find information on these key pages, and it's my goal to continue updating those pages as much as possible, as often as possible. If you're ever wondering what our positions are on other issues, you can find all those on our positions page. And there's lots of resources here. We've got some quick reference summaries for some big issues that we know our members care about. And we've actually got links to the national resource. They have an excellent publication that I always encourage people to refer to, which is this document, Impact on the Issues, a guide of public policy positions. So this 149-page document is all of the public policy positions that the National League has a position on. It also gives an introduction into how the League works and takes action in our history, including general guidelines and how we do our work, how lobbying works at the national level, the difference between advocacy and lobbying, how we apply diversity, equity, and inclusion to our work, and especially establishing how advocacy works at the national level, and then how state and local leagues can take action. And then, so we have multiple principles that actually kind of are the overarching positions, but then we have positions on almost anything you can think of. It is rare these days that the league doesn't have a position that doesn't apply. We have, because we, as a 100-year organization going on 101, 102, lots of position statements have been developed over the years. Obviously, we're best known for working on democracy issues like voting rights and elections process, et cetera, but we also have positions and take action on natural resources and social policy. Now, this is just the federal, the National League document. I also want to refer people to this document on the left here. This is the State League Program for Action. And this is a document that we put together at the State League level, which includes not only the national positions, but also the state league positions, because state leagues often have, including our league, state league positions that we hold in addition to national league positions. So often we'll take a position because the National League did not have a position at the time. And so, we got there first and adopted a position, or maybe we adopted a more specific position on an issue or an additional position on an issue. And so there will often be positions on that. Also, typically the National League only has positions that apply at the national level, not always, but often. And so sometimes there's a state position adopted in addition to that, so that there's something about the state level policy. So, if people are wondering what the league's positions are on issues, we always refer them to this document. This is what controls, and we always refer people to this. The downside of this document is it does not have all the historical context of the National League document. So if you're wondering, specifically what did the league do in the 1970s on environmental policy, that's something you'll want to refer to that national document, because we don't have that historical context in this document. We got comments from members that they, in many ways they loved having that historical context, but also it was hard flipping through 150 pages to find the policy you needed and wanted to look at. So we kind of tried to slim it down. This document is still 43 pages, but I promise you it's as slim as we can get it. I also want to let folks know that if you are part of the Council of Metropolitan Area Leagues, the CMAL, we also do have summaries of their positions as well there so that folks can refer to those. So if you're ever interested in reading those are also available. Obviously, the Council of Metropolitan Area Leagues, they handle what those positions are. We just, keep them as kind of an appendix at the end of this document for reference as a service to the leagues that are part of CMAL. As Marty put in the chat, she makes a good note. Many of you may be interested in the firearms position, which is on page 36 and 37 of this document. We currently have an ongoing study on firearms and whether to update it, and if so, what to update that position to. And so your leagues will likely be asked to review that position and maybe asked to review some consensus questions about that. So this is the document that you'll be referred to if you want to look at the document. Now, as a reminder, the state league can't change the national league position on our own. That's left for the national league. Those positions are changed at the national conventions, but we do have the ability to change the state level positions, and that happens at state conventions. And so there's a whole process for that, and I'll show you the document that refers to that process. So we do get questions sometimes on how do we change a national league position? For that, we have to refer you to the national league, but it typically is a process that happens through the national convention. And of course, one thing I like to remind folks of, because there sometimes is confusion on this, and I think I actually put a sticky note, a digital sticky note in this document referring to it. Yep. So sometimes people come to us and they say, look, we don't have a state position on an issue, or we don't have a local position on an issue, but we know that there are and there's a local league might not have a position on an issue, but they know that there's a state position or a national position. So for example, something on natural resources or on social policy. Sometimes local leagues will say, we feel like we can't do anything because we don't have a local position adopted. I want to be clear for folks, and I put a little digital sticky note in the national document, that local and state leagues can still take action on an issue if there is a national position. That's the benefit of being part of this national organization, because it's already been adopted at the national level. The state league and local leagues automatically can act on those positions within their appropriate league, right? So, if you're in the St. Paul League, obviously it would not be appropriate for the St. Paul League to be advocating to the Minneapolis City Council, right? That needs to be left up to the Minneapolis League. If you are a local league interested lobbying at the state to the state legislature or to the governor on an issue, that happens through the state league, and I'll go over the process for how to get involved in that. So I just want to remind folks that if you don't have a position at the local level, that's okay. You can still act on positions that are adopted at the state and national level. Don't feel like you can't take action. And if you ever have questions about that or anything else that I'm going to cover today, you always can email me or call me. I'm always happy to be a resource for folks. I see a question from Wes in the chat. He says that so much of our current breakdown of our lowercase democratic, thanks for specifying that, Wes, I appreciate that. So democracy issues and election principles is happening at the state level in other states. Is it possible for one state to take a position about things going on in other states, or at least express solidarity with state leagues in those states? Usually that's kind of a position for the National League, for the league in that state, of course. So, the league in Arizona or the league in Texas or the league in Georgia, or the National League will work with or take a position with in consultation with that state league. And that's something we've seen like in Georgia and Arizona, et cetera. I don't think it would be appropriate for us to take a position on what's happening there so much as I think what would be best is sharing what other state leagues have already said or what the National League has said, because other leagues do have press releases and public statements and social media accounts. And it would be appropriate for us to share whatever their statements are. And I think that's probably the best way that we could show our solidarity and support for those principles is to share what those leagues in those states are doing, so folks know what's happening. We also have this little document here in the middle, which is a summary reference sheet. This is kind of our frequent flyer of positions, let's put it that way. Some of the really, really short summaries of some of the most referred to positions that members ask us about or that members of the public ask us about. This document is a couple years old, so it probably needs to be updated. But if you're like, I don't want to page through 43 pages of documents to find the policy, it might be helpful just to check here first. Yep. And Amy's put into the chat that we have seen some, I don't want to say attacks, but breakdowns, as Wes put it, breakdowns of our democratic principles here in Minnesota. And she mentions that I do speak at the time at the legislature in several committees, sometimes in Senator Kiffmeyer's committee, and that's true. That is one of the many things we do, which actually is a great tie-in to the next thing I was going to talk about, which is Lobby Corps and Observer Corps. So with this position, as I mentioned, all these positions are advocacy positions. And I do want to actually go back to something in the national document to help people understand the difference between advocacy and lobbying. So lobbying is when you are trying to change the law, you're specifically promoting or opposing a piece of legislation. If it's something happening in the federal legislature, that is something that the National League works on and has control over. If it's something in the state legislature, that's something that the state league works on and has control over. General advocacy, however, often can be as simple as educational, like developing, writing about a policy issue or evaluating a policy issue, providing a forum or event for discussing issues, etc. And those can be done all the time. Obviously, if you want to work with the state league, I would love that. All for that. Please call me. But you don't have to work with us in the same degree as if you want to lobby. So I want to remind folks that you can always do that general advocacy on the positions we have. But when you're lobbying, you do need to come to the state league or the National League if you want to work at the national level to talk with us about what specifically you want to lobby on. And how a lot of that work happens right now is through our Lobby Corps and Observer Corps. And so you can see what we do, this little page here. We have a link to our Observer Corps and Lobby Corps here. And this page explains what our Lobby Corps and Observer Corps program is. The short answer is Observer Corps members simply watch the state legislature or state boards. So for example, or agencies. So for example, the Campaign Finance Board. It's not a part of the legislature, but it is a public board that does some very important work on money in politics and government ethics. So we do keep an eye on what they're doing. Observer Corps members can go to those meetings and watch the meetings and report back to the State League. And we try to put those reports in our capital letter, which I'll explain more about that in a bit. But essentially, those reports can often get shared with other league members so that league members know what's happening in our state government. Lobby Corps members take that a step further. Not only do they watch and monitor what's happening at the state legislature or with agencies and boards, but they can also go through the training process to actually advocate on behalf of the league. and testify in committee, for example, or draft a letter urging legislators to oppose or vote in favor of specific legislation. We used to do lobby court training in person on weekends a couple years ago. Uh, that wasn't that didn't work for everyone, so we now have an online training system that you can do at your leisure. It's all videos. You just go through the training process through these videos. The handbook is online that you can download and print if you like. Watch the videos. There's a couple of quizzes. They're not, you're not like you have to pass. It's not like if you fail it, you can't become it. It's just like a tool to help people understand, check whether or not they're understanding the most important pieces. So if you get it wrong, it'll tell you what the right answer was, just so you can be reminded. Um, and then you register at the end of it so that we know that you want to be a Lobby Corps member or Observer Corps member. I will say that our participation in Observer Corps and Lobby Corps is not as high as I would like it to be, or Michelle would like it to be, our executive director. So it is likely that we'll be trying to um, work on that and trying to find some other ways that are easier for members to get engaged with our legislative activity. I haven't figured out what that's going to look like yet. That's part of my job for the next year, is to figure out what that should look like. And there's actually many of you on this workshop that I will be calling or video chatting with for further advice and input. Um, so uh, so there's changes to come. So if you're looking at this and you're like, wow, this is really overwhelming, don't worry, I know. my goal is to try to make it more accessible for more people. I see a question in the chat from Jody who asks, she says June 6th, I'm assuming she means January 6th, in Washington, D.C. was a huge attack on democracy. Has the league addressed this problem? That's a great question. I'm going to hold off until later in the workshop to answer that question. The answer is yes, we have, both at the national and the state level. But I think I want to talk more about some other pieces before we get to a question like that. That is a really important question, though, and I will make time for that. So I also want to remind folks that when they become members, they do get subscribed to our subscriptions. Our subscriptions are basically our email lists. And even members of the public can subscribe to some of our email lists. And we have a link for that on our, links on our homepage. And people can subscribe for multiple pieces or multiple, email lists. So for example, our action alerts and our capital letter are two of our most important ones, and I'll explain what both of those are in just a moment. And we also have some other ones like for people-powered fair maps. So if you have not gotten an action alert or the capital letter that went out earlier this month or late last month, make sure that you come back here and fill this out again and get subscribed to the capital letter. When anyone becomes a member, we do subscribe them automatically, but sometimes people people fall through the cracks. And members of the public can sign up for our action alerts and capital letter too. So if you have members of the public who say, you know what, I can't really be a member right now, or I'm not interested in being a member, but I'd love to stay up to date on what you're doing, point them to this page. We'd love to share our capital letter and our action alerts with them. We try to post them to social media too, but people can get an email when we send those out. So our action alerts are the easiest way for our members to participate in our legislative activity. It doesn't require any training. We try to make it really easy for folks to participate. So this is the page where you'll always see our action alerts. These are the state level action alerts. We also have a link here for nationals action alerts. And they've got lots of great action alerts as well here. And they send out their own action alerts, so we link to them when possible. This is just an example of an action alert that went out earlier this year. Usually I mention a bill number. I did not in this particular action alert because we weren't sure at the time what bill it was going to be in. So I didn't include a bill number. But typically I will include a specific bill number. And it essentially gives you what the issue is, what the league position is on the issue, and that we need you to call an elected official, usually your state House representative or your state Senate senator, and contact them. And it's super easy. You just click the take action button. It'll ask for your address, um, so that it will connect you to the right people. So I'm going to put in my old address. Um, and so it shows me who my senator was, and gives me options for how to contact them. So I would fill in this other information because it's required by the state legislative website. Um, but you'll fill in your information, and then we typically have a pre-written, talking points that you can send to your legislator. I always recommend that you personalize it. So I try to remember to let people edit this. Um, we also, when possible, also give you options to call. Um, a reminder, if you want to call them, this is your phone script for when you talk with them. And you can actually say, I got a response. And they said that they were in favor of, doing what we asked. And then you can click called. And then sometimes if your legislator has a social media account, like on Twitter, and you have a Twitter account, which I know not a lot of members do, but if you do, we also give that as an option. So you can tweet at your legislator, which is great because that can also be seen by other members of the public, and then they'll get involved or like retweet you or share your social media post. So our action alerts are super important because they're how our league members contact their legislators. I see another question from Wes. I'm actually going to save that for the Q&A session too. Another great question, but I want to make sure I get through this and leave plenty of time for Paul. Our other subscription that I mentioned was our capital letter. We post those under the League news blog, which actually might be renamed soon, but we post that here. And it's basically what's happening at the Capitol, how the League has been involved, anything we're monitoring. If we do have Observer Corps reports, we often will put that in here. If we've testified, we'll put that information in there. So for example, where'd it go? Yep, so this is, we talk about the conference committee and end of session negotiations that were going on. We do link to the testimony that I provided in the state government conference committee. And sometimes we'll also link to a lot of the documents. So we link to, policy language documents that are available on the legislation if you're interested in learning about that. So we try to put that information together for folks. So we've been monitoring redistricting legislation, for example. So we've put links to all the redistricting legislation as well. Amy asked a great question in the chat. Does it go out by email or is it only available on the website? It is both currently. So we will send it out to anyone who is subscribed to receive those capital letter. Remember down here, if anyone is subscribed, we will send them the capital letter. So again, members, but then also people who aren't members, anyone who's in the public can subscribe as well. But we also put it on our website for ease of access. We used to put it in a PDF format. That ended up adding several hours of staff work to the capital letter. So we're trying to slim down the amount of work it takes to get it out to folks so that we can send it out more easily. But we still are going to try and make sure we find a format that people can print at home if they do want to print it and read. Because I know that many of our members do like to read from a printed version. So don't be afraid that it's only going out, that it's only an email format right now, and that you don't see the typical PDF. We are making sure that there will be a format available that you can print and read. So you may be wondering, what are other resources that are available for local leagues when we want to take action? That's great. And most of those resources can be found under our member resources page. I also want to point people to our governance page. Under the governance page, there's policies and guidance, and there's a whole set of policies and guidance on I see a question from Sarah. I'm going to do that before we go on because it's about action alerts. How do you look? How do you and locals decide on what to send out as an action alert? What qualifies? What doesn't? Is there a fine line to look for? I'm so glad you asked because I actually am about to cover that in the next section. So I'll get to that. So if you're looking for guidance on how to do some action, so first I would check the policies and guidance. One of the most common requests I get is, how do I stay nonpartisan, or can I do this? Is this nonpartisan? And we want to work with another organization, but we don't know whether it's safe or not. We don't know whether they're nonpartisan. So we've put together 2 documents to help kind of provide guidance. Of course, if this is not helpful or you need more guidance, again, always welcome to call or email me. But these are kind of the frequently asked situations that we've put here. So these best practices for staying nonpartisan in advocacy are a great place to start. We also have another one for voter service if you have folks who do voter service work. And then we also have guidance for local leagues on coalitions and partnerships. So kind of a series of questions you should ask yourself about the organization you're thinking about working with, and whether or not, to help you walk through whether or not that's a good idea for your local league. Now, on the member resources page, we also have a ton of other materials available. So action and advocacy section, we have links to old capital letters. We actually stopped putting links here because they all go in the blog now. But these are some of the older ones from the last couple years. We also have, again, links to the state action alerts. In case you forget where that link is, you can always find it on member resources. We also have a link again to nationals action alerts in case you can't find those easily. We also have a link to National's Outreach Circle platform. So this is an app that you can use on your phone if you have a smartphone. The State League currently does not use this app, but the National League does as a way to engage members. If you're interested in learning more about Outreach Circle and how to use it, we've also linked to the supporter kit that National has put out, and that walks people through all of that stuff. Judy, I see your question. Can we locate a position with a search of a topic, i.e. voter ID? The best way to do that is to go to the Our Positions document, open that program for action document, and then do Control F on your keyboard. Whoops. That will, hold on, sorry. Let's try that again. Control F on your keyboard. That should pop up a little box here on the upper right-hand corner of your screen that says Find and Document. And then you can search for a keyword. Okay, well, or you can just download and open the document as well and search for a keyword. Julie, the document that is called Program for Action, I don't know if you can see my screen. Can others see my screen? Yes? Okay, good. Yeah, it's the document that's on the screen right now that I just showed folks. So, for example, I just put, well, vote's not a great one because, our name is on there. So, but let's say you were looking for money in politics or campaign finance. So you just would click, you would just search for that keyword. Or let's say you wanted to talk about, does the league have a position on abortion? It says no. I know that that's not correct. You sometimes have to look for different words. So you may need to look for pregnancy or pregnant. You might have to get creative with your searches because I know that we do have a position on healthcare that covers abortion as an issue. So that's the best option you have for trying to find something based on a keyword, is to just search the document with Control F. Okay, back to the member resources page. We also have information on best practices for other activities. So if you want to write a letter to your editor on one of our policy positions, we actually we have a best practices for getting your letter to the editor published. This is something you can use as a reference point if you want to write a letter to your editor on an issue that your local league is working on, or on advocating on a general policy issue. If your league does legislative interviews, we of course have the legislative interview guide document, and I update that every year before the legislative session. And we also have information on the program planning. So if you want to change the position of the league, that is the program planning process. Some of you may remember there was a survey that went out earlier in the year, et cetera. And that is that process. This is the process that is typically used for adopting a new position or dropping a position. So that's the policy. This is the document we refer people to in the meanwhile. This is all stuff that you'll see when you go through the Observer Corps or Lobby Corps training, but there is an action alert. There is an action alert request form or proposal form. So that is actually this is actually one of the things that Lobby Corps members can do, is they can recommend on an issue to submit an action alert. And this actually walks through all the things that we consider when we decide whether or not to send an action alert. So there has to be a league position on it, for example. It needs to be about one issue. You can't have 5 issues in one action alert. We try to think about things like, if we have another action alert we're sending out on a priority issue, we might not send an action alert about another issue. So for example, if I know that there's a vote coming up on voter ID, I might not send an action alert on other issues because I want people to focus on that voter ID action alert. So that's how we kind of go through our action alert process. I actually want to go back to, I see Marty has asked how to go back to that capital letter. Again, that's under the League news blog, and then it is the first link there. Peggy, I see your question. I'll have to loop back to that one. So anyways, always go back to the member resources page here, because this has all those materials for folks. And again, you can always just call or email me if you're not sure. I know we're running out of time and I want to leave plenty of time for Paul and question and answers. So I'm going to try and cut it off there, even though there's more stuff that I did want to talk about. But I just want to make sure that people see where all those resources are. There are lots of places to find it. And if you can't find it, just call or email me. I can always direct you to it. Paul, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give you the next 10 minutes to do your part. So Paul is going to talk about our ongoing People Powered Fair Maps program. While he's giving his presentation, I'm going to try to answer some of folks' questions in the chat if I can. Otherwise, we'll cover that at the end, right before we end our webinar, our workshop. Take it away, Paul.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I'll be pretty quick. What I want to do is just basically give this group, because I recognize a number of you I've talked to, maybe on our task force, things like that, or had recent presentations, but a number of you may have not been much engaged in what we're doing with people power for mass and redistricting. I want to make sure you have a sense of where we are in this program and process. This is the timeline of where we are today and what remains in this program, at least in the next year. The highlighted underlined items are the opportunities for engagement with the redistricting process. These slides will be posted, so you'll get these. And again, you just reach out to me through email if you have a question or want to be more involved. And I'll say that again at the end. So legislative hearings, both the House and the Senate redistricting committees said they were going to have hearings this summer. We've not heard anything more on that. So a lot of the energy right now is going into getting the budget resolved and avoiding a state shutdown. So, that may be something that's a July, August, September kind of thing. So we'll, be monitoring that and let you know. What we expect is that sometime in July or August, the Supreme Court Chief Justice will appoint a special redistricting panel. That'll be a group of 5 active sitting judges to separately, independently take inputs, testimony on drawing maps. There is right now 2 court cases in that have been consolidated. The lead case, most of you are aware, is Watson v. Simon. And so those have been accepted by Supreme Court. They're being stayed pending action by the legislature. But historically, sometime in the summer, the Supreme Court will appoint a panel, and that's to make sure that the courts are ready with maps should the legislature and the governor not agree on maps, which I have not heard anybody who expects that to happen. There are optimists who would like to see it happen, certainly, and we would too, but don't expect it. So that's going to happen. Census block data comes in August. That is in a legacy format. The official date that you'll hear from the Census Bureau is the end of September. That's for current data, but that that August date is what's important for us, because both the state of Minnesota demographer's office is going to convert that data, and the major mapping software companies that we use and the government uses and other people use, they're all going to convert that data. So, sometime in the second or third week of August, we'll have the census block data needed to draw districts that meet all the legal requirements. Special redistricting panel will have hearings sometime in the fall and early winter. That's an opportunity for engagement. Local governments, cities with wards and counties there's an opportunity to influence them on how they do local redistricting. That's a whole discussion that I can have with you or your league or a team for your league. But that's an opportunity to engage them in how they can do redistricting beyond the bare minimum legal requirements, because that's what their staffs will fall back to, is what's legally required. February 15th is when the Supreme Court will issue their final redistricting order. The key thing from that is when cities and counties will establish precinct boundaries. Those precinct boundaries have to follow congressional and legislative district boundaries. So that kicks off the local redistricting, at least the final part of it. What you will hear a lot from local governments is, well, we can't do anything until we get the census data. We can't do anything until we get the legislative maps to draw precincts. We would respectfully disagree that there's a lot of preparatory work with process and how they'll take input, talking to residents about what's important to them that can come before that. But that's part of the exercise. And then in end of March and then late April is when the cities and counties have to be done. That is a very short time frame from mid-February to the end of March. So the observation is that cities and counties should be working ahead of those redistricting maps that'll come out of the courts in mid-February. They can and they should, and they may reflect that they're not, but we think that they have that opportunity. Our focus right now, based on where we are, is engaging, educating, and mobilizing communities to advocate for public involvement. Okay, those three: engage, educate, mobilize. And this is really a community mobilizing activity to get not just our league members, but more members of the community to reach out to local and state officials about having public input and having transparency in redistricting. So that's something that's really key. Um, Another one is, identifying, connecting with community groups and organizations. So it's not just about us going and identifying everybody, but it's about finding other organizations. And this is something that we see as a strategic objective, an enabler for the People Power for Maps campaign, is to develop and grow these partnerships and carry those partnerships forward to other activities. And Nick talks about other things that, from an advocacy standpoint, the league has with voter ID, with Restore the Vote, with other items that we feel are important that will be shared interests with these other communities. And so, this is a chance to develop those partnerships. The next thing is influencing development of state and local maps. I talked about those engagement opportunities. We will help with how to provide testimony, should you have that opportunity, what those public inputs look like, and how you influence at those levels. Then the last thing is, and this is something Nick has, and we're currently evaluating, but it's how we support litigation that advances our interests as a league, but also the Our Maps Minnesota campaign goals for community representation. We are one of the key partners in that campaign. That is focused on ensuring community representation versus political party representation through the mapping process. It has a particular focus on communities of color, and we are very engaged and supportive of that effort. The things that are kind of the focus activities going forward, community mapping. Our target is to have at least 30 community mapping sessions this summer, July, August. We've got a team of folks who have had training, will be trained further and get some practice in doing this. But we want to get maps, and we have on the Our Maps Minnesota mapping page. We're collecting those maps, and we use those in our advocacy and lobbying and litigation potentially for maps. And then testimony for the redistricting committees. This fall, we're going to do another round of postcarding to local city and county officials on local redistricting. It's winter. Okay, testimony to the special redistricting panel, and then more carding and more outreach and participation with local government. So you see, this is going now for a whole year, and there's a lot of opportunities to engage on over a sustained period and educate the community. I'll come back to the chat here in a moment. The long term, okay, because our goal is not just to, it is right now to influence the maps before us, because that is our opportunity. But we still, before 2030, need to change how redistricting done is Minnesota. You will hear a lot of people say Minnesota likes divided government. And you're right, we do like divided government. Every decade since 1960, we've had divided government. Therefore, no party has had the opportunity to gerrymander Minnesota. But that is not how the system is designed to work. The system is designed that the legislature can draw the maps, because both parties have gotten smart enough about how to gerrymander maps. If one party gets control of the process, it is highly likely that it will be used for partisan advantage. So we have to get this changed before 2030. So this is a long-term effort to continue to advocate for legislation and constitutional amendment. Our goal is to educate, engage, and mobilize voters to advocate for changes. And we'll be working through our strategies, after this, summer, and then after likely 2022, because we still got a divided legislature, and there's limited opportunities for advancing that. So we'll be continuing to work with leagues, our partners, and new community partners on how to advance that. And this is just some things about local opportunities this year. Postcard letter, and I can have a whole discussion again. And I see in the chat, I gotta have my glasses here, but having discussion with local leagues about Anoka, absolutely. I'd be very happy. I want to talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime, and it doesn't matter where I am geographically. The wonders of Zoom, I can talk to you, and in whatever form, whatever time works for you. This is a real centerpiece of what I'm focused on. And I messed myself up here. Advocating for input, defining redistricting principles. There's a whole host of things we can do with local government to go beyond the legal minimum that's required. Again, I say partner with other community organizations, because if it's only us in a league, we're not going to be able to make the difference, and we're not going to be able to get the change. Communities, talk about community groups and programs, partnerships, and focusing on equity representation of all kinds. And I tell people that focusing on racial and ethnic representation is important, but it's not sufficient. And frequently that's not going to be, it's kind of like the easy way, because sometimes, there's these, a lot of communities like the white community, the African-American community, the Asian community are not monolithic. Their socioeconomic differences can be more important. So then if you look at where there are areas with a lot of rental housing, middle class or lower income people, that is important. I'll just give a quick call out for our PPFM task force. 32 members, 17 leagues represented. Happy to have more leagues. We got 34 leagues out there, so half of the leagues aren't represented yet. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. I just want to make sure that we are providing what your local needs or what would be helpful to you. And we need to grow members, because we're doing 30 mapping sessions. The RMAPS Municipal Senate campaign wants to do 50. So that's 80 mapping sessions here this summer. So we'll provide training. It's not incredibly difficult. It can be very rewarding. The last thing I want to leave you with is to remember that without discomfort, there's no growth. You have to put your place in a state of discomfort to grow. We need to embrace being uncomfortable and understand that we may need to make others uncomfortable through our advocacy. We're going to be asking city councils, county commissioners to do things that they aren't legally required to do and that they haven't done, with encouraging public input, considering communities of interest, looking beyond just the lines in order to draw their maps. So that's what I want to leave you with. Very dense topic, but there's some very specific, concrete things you and your league can do here in the time remaining this year and then going forward. Just from the chat, Anoka, yeah, Julie, absolutely. I'm happy to talk to Anoka. I'd love to hear what your chair said and go to that. And Wes, you got the maps. If you go to the legislature, the Legislative Coordinating Commission GIS page, they got maps, and they got a whole range of maps for the historical districts. They've got districts based on the current districts with population variations. Lots of great resources there.
Yep. And I put a link to that in the chat. And I'm going to actually follow up, because I know people have questions we haven't answered. I am going to follow up with an email to all the attendees with some written responses to the questions we weren't able to get to. I would go over time, but I can't, because there's another workshop at 7:30 that we have to roll into.
And I have a document with kind of useful links for redistricting, really simple stuff. I'll give that to Nick, and we'll include that in what we send out.
Yeah. So we'll try to make sure that those links get to that email that people get. The Mary asked, how do we access the trainings that you're doing? Paul, do you want to follow up with that with Mary?
Yes.
I think Paul will just do a training for you.
Yeah, and Mary, I'll send that to the task force. And so, yeah, you're part of the task force. I'll think about how else we can communicate that.
Yeah.
Could I ask, so you're not going to have a fixed schedule of when that people can look up and join one that's already scheduled? You're going to be doing them as listed? Is that?
Yeah, I kind of lost that a little bit. Yeah,
she's asking if you're going to do as requested or only have like 3 set dates.
I will do both. I will set some dates and I'll do it as requested. I'm here for you guys.
Yeah, Paul is a gem. We're very glad to have him.
And in Amy's comment, what I'll do with the WESL links is I'll have a document. I do have some suggested responses to local leaders, because we get really interesting responses from elected officials when asked about redistricting. So I've got some suggested responses.
Yep. I do want to touch really quickly on one of the questions that Wes asked. He asks, when we can't lobby, such as the Supreme Court or either the federal Supreme Court or the state Supreme Court, how does the league take legal role on cases? If you're interested in that, watch the staff report that will be happening tomorrow. because we have actually, over the last 2 years, participated in 6 different lawsuits, either as a party to that lawsuit or submitting an amicus brief. Or I'm sorry, 5, and we are currently evaluating how we will participate in the current redistricting litigation. We hope to have a formal announcement and a decision made on that soon, but we don't have anything public available yet. But over the last 5 years, we have participated in 5 different lawsuits. If people want more information about those lawsuits, I can share more details about that. We had a great question about January 6th and what the state or national league is doing on that, as well as what if the league has a position on a policy issue, but it's a controversial one. How do we handle that as a nonpartisan organization? I'm going to send folks either later tonight or tomorrow a couple of links that will answer those questions. Of course, feel free to email me if you have follow-up questions, but I will have multiple links. The National League has put out a statement. The State League has put out a statement on the January 6th situation. We actually made a request to state legislators to hold state legislators accountable who participated in the rhetoric that led to and participated in, kind of created the environment that led to January 6th. And in terms of positions that might be considered controversial, the National League has a blog post that walks through how being nonpartisan doesn't mean you're apolitical. It doesn't mean that you don't stand up for an issue, and an issue is not necessarily partisan. So that, I think, is a great starting point for people to go through and read for more guidance and talking points and kind of information on that. And again, if you have follow-up questions about either of those, always available. So we'll try to share all of those links in a follow-up email later tonight or tomorrow. And again, if anyone has questions for me, more than welcome to call me or email me. I know we're kind of short on time, and I apologize for that. Time got away from me. But I want to emphasize to everyone, I'm always here to be a resource. Even if you have something going on in your local league that has nothing to do with national or state, call me. I'm happy to be a resource and give you ideas, information that I know exists. I had Peggy Decker from Red Wing contact me in the chat and say, mention an issue she's handling in her local league. And I'm like, yeah, I absolutely can help you with that. I can find stuff. Send me an email and I'll get back to you next week. So if you have an issue you're working on at the local league level, don't feel like you're out there all on your own and you can't give me a call. I'm happy to help you. That's what I'm here for. So we actually have to close out the workshop because the next workshop is starting. I actually just got a text saying we're getting kicked out. So thank you all for your time. Again, I apologize that we're cut short on time. If you have any questions, again, call me or email me. I want to be available to you all. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. It's great to have so many folks here tonight. So thanks for your time, everyone. Bye.